welcome to this episode of Candid Conversations. Have you ever wondered what being a super nanny is like? Well, today we're chatting with super yacht nanny Ella Peters. With over 8 years of experience in yachting, 6 of which have been as a super yacht nanny, Ella has a wealth of expertise in childcare roles and stew life on board. From growing up sailing, being passionate about the arts and crafts, her love for helping people, she's excited to be able to help others. She founded SuperYachtNanny to support and help more people in the yachting nanny world. She has worked with high-profile, high-net-worth families, ultra-high-net-worth families, private charters, yachts up to 90 meters, and she's worked with families of 6 children, all under the age of 3. So, welcome, Ella, and it's lovely to have you here. Can you share with us your journey into childcare on super yachts and what inspired you and motivated you to pursue this unique career path?
Hello. Firstly, thank you very much for having me. It's really lovely to be here, and I like nothing better than chatting about these kind of things. So yeah, let's dive in. So how I got into it, I think, well, I know it just happened really organically. So kind of rewinding a bit, I had always done childcare growing up through college, etc. And then when everyone else was working at the pub, I was always babysitting and with little people. I then went on to be a super yacht stewardess because I'd grown up sailing and had always loved that kind of option and knew I wasn't set for going directly to university. So I went to become a stewardess for a few years. I really enjoyed it. I also did a winter ski season and things. But the thing that was consistently my favorite and what I loved the most was the childcare side of things. So I then went to university in the Netherlands, and I got into the world of super yacht nannying. So I think it's also important to say from the get-go, I had some quite high-profile clients. I had musicians that I was their children, especially when they were on tour, I was caring for their children. And so, as we all know, references mean the world in these kind of industries. So my references already were quite loud. Pardon the pun. And it kind of just took off from there. I think I know there's not very many nannies that have got a yachting background. And so to understand both perspectives, to understand the childcarer's perspective, but also what works for crew in terms of family charters, makes a big difference. So bringing those kind of things together, I started super yacht nannying, and yeah, it went really well. I kept getting rebooked, and it just kind of spread through word of mouth, particularly. Yeah, I think what's interesting is, well, in yachting is very much said to have a successful charter, you need to have good food and good weather. Good food, if you have a happy chef, you're kind of going to be okay. Good weather, hope and pray and do all that jazz, make it work out. But I firmly believe you need happy kids to make a charter. If you've got a family charter, you need happy kids to make it a success. Because if the kids are not happy, the parents are not happy, the crew are not happy, it's just a general disaster and no one's having fun. So if you can be the bridge that makes the kids happy, everybody has a much better time, and it all just works out in a million different ways. So yeah, that's what I do. I've been doing it. Actually, it's like another year's past. I need to update my statistics or my numbers. But gosh, I've been in yachting, I think 9 years, and nannying on board 7 potentially, I think. And I'm absolutely not prepared to quit it. People often ask me actually, oh, now you do the coaching and things like that, are you not working on board anymore? And it's a firm no. I'm absolutely still working on board freelance because I love it so much. It's my favorite job in the world, and it brings me so much joy. So I have no plans to stop it. But having said that, it is really hard work, but I do love it. So yeah, that's how I got here.
Thank you so much for that. Now, I have a few questions for you. So one of them is, you said you worked or you trained as a stewardess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that some of the training that you got as a stewardess transfers into the nanny side of things?
In terms of training, like stew training, I never did these stewardess courses where they teach you how to make a bed and iron and things, because that's a different story. But in terms of like my STCW, which is the basic yachting qualification you need, firefighting, first aid, things like that, definitely some transferable skills, but the experiences from yachting, 110%, such as working with ultra high net worth clients, the level of attention to detail, the proactive, not reactive approaches, the exceptionally hard work and demanding requests. In terms of that, 110%, there's a lot of crossover. Although I would say it's tougher to be the nanny than to be a stewardess, for example, because if you're a stew, you have a chief stew, then you have a captain, and then you have potentially a broker or a management company. And so there's all these levels of hierarchy that kind of protect you in case things go wrong. Whereas if you're a nanny and you muck up, you need to go, I'm really sorry, sir, this has happened. And you also need to really advocate for yourself, because if things are not okay, you need to stand up and say, I'm sorry, but unfortunately, this is not okay, and make a plan that works to resolve it.
Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about those challenges that you face as a nanny on board a super yacht, and how do you overcome them? I know you've touched a little bit on being proactive rather than reactive, and some of the, crazy requests that get asked. So how do you deal with it? How do you overcome them?
I think a big challenge of being a freelance nanny, this also applies to kind of ad hoc, just general freelance nannying as well, is that you often don't get information like any handover notes or a meeting with the existing nannies. And so often I will just directly meet the family on board, and I don't know anything about these children, really. I don't know bedtimes, I don't know allergies, I don't know routines, I don't know preferences. And it is the definition of flying blind. The parents are on holiday. They're not in the mood to answer 1,000,005 questions and give you a massive download on how everything goes. You kind of just need to figure it out and make everything run smoothly and perfectly without a hiccup, without knowing what that looks like. So sometimes it gets a little bit interesting and there's a lot of initiative to use. But yeah, it somehow just does work. You ask the things that you actually really need to know, and then you figure out and kind of go with the flow on a lot of things. Also, I know from doing it so many times from these experiences, what works and what doesn't work. So, okay, maybe it looks a little bit different to their normal schedule, but this is an alternative that consistently works well on board. So, like, for example, doors are really heavy on yachts because they're often fire doors. So if they're used to sleeping with the door open, popping a rolled towel in the door, like keeps it a bit open while they're settling and going to bed. So, it's not quite shut, but that's a small tweak that just works on board.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that can be a little bit interesting. It can feel daunting at the start because you're like, I don't know anything about these children. Like, are they going to bed at 7 p.m.? Are they going to bed at 2 a.m.? I have absolutely no idea. And so just figuring it out. Another thing that can be tricky is that kids need to be supervised all the time on board. You can't have a 5-year-old running around freestyle around a super yacht that no one knows where they are. It's one thing in their home when they can go to the garden by themselves, or if they're allowed to go to their bedroom alone, or whatever the at-home rules are. They're almost always different to the rules on board. Sometimes families are very laissez-faire about this. Sometimes they're definitely not. Sometimes the captains are very strong in their opinions on it. I'm very much of the opinion children need to be supervised at all times, because on board things can go wrong so fast, and it's terrifying. So if we can just take away problems away by supervising them, it's much better. And so how this looks I would say seriously good communication, being consistently really communicative with crew, with the parents, with the family. So you just know where the children are at all times. You can't have guests turn around and say, oh, where's little, I don't know, Charlie? And you say, I don't know, because that is just not acceptable. And so, you know, if they're not with you, they're with a crew member, or they're with their parents, or they're whatever, they're accounted for at all times. Yeah, that's a big one. What other challenges are there? Long hours. A lot of people think that I go on holiday with really lovely people on really lovely boats, and that's really not the case. It's like, I don't know, 16 hours easily a day, and it's massive hours on your feet in guest facing situations all the time, what with often 24-hour care. And so how I make that work for me is, one, a lot of coffee, two, well rested before and after the trip, because I know I actually need to let my body rest and recover because it is just very intense. Three, not just eating chicken nuggets with the kids. It's very convenient to eat kids' food, completely get that, and I do it a lot. But I know myself that I am a much better nanny if my body is actually nourished. Surprise, surprise. So I'm happy to eat kids' food, but I also try to balance it out with some actual food. And that makes things go a lot better.
So a couple of questions that I'm sure people are thinking about. So one of them is, you did talk about the long hours, and you did talk about the fact that it's not a holiday. So how long are your trips typically?
So I am doing trips the length of the charter. So I'm either arriving the evening before or the morning of the trip if I'm flying to the boat, or sometimes I fly to the family's residence and then we fly together privately to the yacht. But basically the charter is 1 week or 2 weeks, sometimes 10 days, but my favorite ones are 10 days because you get into a routine and you know what's going on and you get to enjoy everything on board, all the water sports and all the beautiful places, but they don't get cabin fever just yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then the one other question that I have is, how many children in general are you responsible for? So do you ever find yourself in positions, because I know this has happened to me, you're hired by this charter, so you're going on the charter, it's 2 weeks long, the family arrives, they only have one child, and then all of a sudden they invite all of their friends and they bring all of their children and they don't have any nannies. Have you ever found yourself in that situation?
Not too many times. On travel nanny roles, it happens a lot more often than there's a villa party, and it's like, wow, there's a lot of small people here. And also wedding nannying, that gets really crazy. But on board, what my most common charter is the grandparents chartering, and then I have all the cousins. And it's really nice because they know it, they normally know each other quite well, and they've grown up together, so they just get on quite well, and it makes things a lot easier. But in terms of like when they bring a lot of other children, it has happened, and I will then ask crew to, you know, be involved, and because I can't watch that many children, it's just not safe. And, you know, if you think of the perspective of there's a fire on board, how many kids can you carry out? Yeah, that's where you need to think. 22 children looks like a lot of fun and a lot of craziness and a lot of laughter, shouting and screaming probably as well. But I can't do that myself.
All right. Thank you. And boats and charters, I'm sure, are super fast environments. Things happen very quickly. People need to, you know, need to be in different places on the boat at different times. I know you've spoken about safety, but how do you ensure the safety and the well-being of the children under your care while they're on board? I know you've spoken about eyes on children the whole time. What other tips can you share with us?
Have a really clear policy on life jackets. So everybody knows, all parents, grandparents, crew, everybody is on the same page, and also keep them somewhere very convenient. So, you know, in the garage by the tender, so they're going to be put on every time you get on the tender. And then there's no quibbles, there's no, oh, but just this time you don't need it. It's consistently, this is the rule, this is what we're doing, pop it on. It's really easy to do. Safety briefings should happen at the start of every charter. It's obviously different if it's a private yacht, because then they own it and they know, the children are often on board regularly, they know kind of what the setup is. But a muster station on board is where you go in case of an emergency. And so when they're old enough to know what a muster station is, I make it really clear, and I talk about it, that in case anything funny happens, or you feel scared, or you're not sure what's going on, this is where you need to go. And it has happened before. I mean, it was just that the dishwasher got a bit too steamy and, you know, set off the alarms. But the alarms are loud and it can feel really scary. And then the fire doors will like close. And so for them to know without having to really think where they're going to go is really important. Obviously, you need to be old enough to know about those things. But yeah. What other safety things would I say? I always carry a first aid kit with me. Well, obviously it's in my cabin when I'm on board, but when we go on excursions and things, I've always got my little first aid kit in with me in my handbag. It contains nothing crazy, just the things that you actually need, plus blister plasters, because you can guarantee some adult is wearing some exceptionally beautiful sandals that are really, really hurting her feet. So things like that are really easy to do, and they just make things that much safer. This is like kind of safety related, but also when we go on excursions, and if deck crew or stews are accompanying us carrying water and things, I give them a safety briefing, like, well, not just safety, but a briefing for the children. So it like, I don't do anything super complicated, just things like if you're holding a child's hand, they need to be on the building side of the pavement, not the road side, because crew are often people who haven't actually been around children that much. You know, if they've been on board since they're 20, they're, you know, they haven't had that much interaction with friends or families, kids as an adult, and so it's just not on the top of their mind. And then also, like, you know, if they're picking up, saying, oh, I'm going to pick you up now, so they know things like that. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. And I know you've spoken about the long days. Could you walk us through a typical day in the role of a childcare provider on a super yacht?
Absolutely. Buckle in, it's long. So I get up before them. I often don't know what time they're going to get up, so I make sure I'm up and breakfasted before them. And I have my breakfast before they wake up, because I enjoy having 5 minutes to myself. And even if it just means scrolling Instagram or just sitting quietly in the crew mess, just having those few minutes of peace before chaos ensues. Well, happy chaos, but still busyness.
Yes.
I really like. And then kind of mill around or help stewardesses a bit, or chitter chatter until the kids get up. Then we do breakfast together. Normally on board, it's like a buffet style breakfast. So we have breakfast and then go and get them dressed, sun cream up and everything. And then we normally just play for a bit, and don't really do arts and crafts that early in the day, but just a bit of playtime. And then the parents get up, and it normally ends up into breakfast round 2, which couples up with snack time. So that works quite well. And then their food has settled, so we're ready to do water sports and get out on the water, have some fun. It's also nice to do it in the morning because there's less other boats around. The water is normally a bit calmer and the sun is not as intense. So that works quite well. And the crew have had a chance to get things set up and ready to go. It's not first thing at 7 o'clock in the morning. Then if they're having lunch on board, we do lunch. Normally it looks like, I would just say these trips vary totally from trip to trip. So this is a very generic one. I posted this recently online and I got a few people saying, oh, look, I've never had that experience as a nanny on board. And I said, well, yeah, because I've only had this sometimes, but I've had other things as well. But anyway. And then, yeah, lunch, often family style. So it's nice when the kids eat with the adults and it kind of creates those family moments that are really memorable. And I also like it when that happens because it means I'm not eating lunch with them. So I can then zip down to crew, eat my lunch quickly, and then I'm ready for them when they've finished. Otherwise, I'll eat with them or be at the table with them if I'm not eating, according to their preferences, of course. And then after lunch, I like to do things a bit inside because it's really hot. So if they're little, go and have a nap, or it's a really nice time to do arts and crafts. Also, yachts are pretty good for building dens. They've always got sturdy chairs and lots of blankets and things to make cushion forts. So I quite like a bit of den building in the afternoon. Then maybe they're going out for an ice cream into, I don't know, if we're in Amalfi or somewhere, for example. It's a good kind of ice cream time by that point, or that they then again do water sports. And then what happens next? Kind of kids' dinner time and canapes for the adults. So yeah, I'm all involved in that. Then after dinner, bath time, and maybe a movie, or maybe doing a bit of making or a bit of playing, and then kind of winding down for bed. It gets tricky in the evenings because the stewardesses always want to go into the cabins to do turn downs and things. So I try and help out where I can with that because it's really in and out of the cabins kind of time of all the guests. But that does sound quite relaxed, but it's normally very full on. Yeah, and then I put them to bed. If I'm either sharing a cabin with them, I've got the monitor, or I've got my own cabin or a shared crew cabin. So that, just play that by ear, and then be ready for the next day.
Okay, it's your breakdown is very similar to what I used to do when I worked as a nanny on a super yacht. I wasn't hired just for charters, so I traveled with a family, but basically that was kind of a breakdown that we had. So very,
Nice.
very similar. Okay, so with your experience in the yachting industry, what advice would you give to aspiring childcare professionals who want to become super yacht nannies?
Pitch yourself as one, not as specifically as a super yacht nanny, but pitch your services to ultra high net worth clients. So understand what they're looking for in a childcare provider, and develop your skills in those areas, or rephrase what you do already into a way that actually speaks their language. Sorry, tell me the question again, please.
Yes, with your experience, what advice would you give to aspiring childcare professionals who want to get into the super yacht industry?
Yeah, so definitely to have proper ultra high net worth client experience. Travel nannying is also really well regarded. Get networking is another big piece of advice, because there are jobs out there, but you're not going to find them by just searching on Google. They are a lot of the time word of mouth, or some jobs are coming through me, but quite a lot of jobs are coming through me last year. But we all know the very best jobs come from word of mouth and personal recommendation. What else would I say? Oh, make a portfolio. Portfolios are such a good way to showcase who you are as a childcare provider in a professional yet personable way. And I know when I'm helping with recruitment things and screening candidates, that it's a really lovely way to get to know, oh cool, this is who they are as a person. What else should you do? Don't be afraid of hard work, because it is hard work. It's exceptionally rewarding and it's really great fun. And to be a part of making those amazing memories on board for families and little people is amazing, but it is also very hard work. In general, be proactive, not reactive, because being reactive just simply isn't enough. You need to be consistently going above and beyond in everything, basically. Yeah, I would say they're my top things. Bit of a mumble jumble, but
I would add, make sure you know how to swim.
oh yeah. Oh, that's a very good. And know that you don't get seasick.
Yes, which seem very basic, but I have had so many nannies come on board when I was working on board who couldn't swim. And then they wanted to do water sports with the children. I was like, you can't, because you can't swim. And if you can't swim, your charge is not supervised. So
Yeah,
your
your
charge will
double
come with
liability.
me, but you can't swim. So you're not going in the water. And it was shocking to me, the amount of people on boats who could not swim.
Do you know what I don't even think about things like this because
I know.
it's such a basic thing. Like, obviously, in my opinion, obviously you shouldn't be going for a job like that if you can't swim. I'm not asking you to be a trained lifeguard,
No.
but I mean, lifeguarding is a skill that is very nice to see on a CV. But a confident swimmer is really important. Yeah.
Yes. And a confident swimmer in the sea, because it's different if you're
Yeah.
swimming in the sea and if you're swimming in a swimming pool that's just, it's just
Yeah.
sitting there and there are no
It's so
waves.
much. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
And
And
understand like how currents work and things and what you're gonna do with a child that's freaking out in the water, because it can be stressful. If they're pushing you under, you need to be, one, powerful enough to swim, and two, know what you're actually going to do. Yeah.
yes. Yeah. That just brings to mind an incident that happened with me and one of my charges, but that's the story for another time.
That's a story for not on the podcast.
Exactly. All right. So what? Yes.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I get asked all the time for like, oh, what crazy stories have you had happen on board, Ella? And it's like, oh my goodness, so many crazy things have happened that, but also I really respect my clients' confidentiality, so I'm not going to tell you. But I could, if I was going to write a book, I could write a book on the madness that
Yes.
unfolds.
The
Yeah,
madness that unfolds on boats.
it's a lot.
I think if the two of us put our heads together, we could probably come up with a very big and long book, but we won't. All right. So why don't you tell everybody what it is that you do and how they can reach out to you if they would like some more information?
Thank you very much. So I now do Super Yacht Nanny coaching. So if you are a nanny who's looking to get into to like transition their services on board, I would love to help you. So I offer one-on-one coaching, and we go through everything you need to know and get you completely ready to roll to be on board. I also sell guides that are available on my website, which cover different areas, including templates for CVs, reference letters, and portfolios, as well as like job guides, how to do guides, stewardess support, etc. I also do job referrals. So if you have a role, if you're looking for a role, get in touch, because jobs do come in via me. And that leads me nicely on to say that you can connect with me through Instagram at SuperYachtNanny, on my Facebook group, SuperYachtNanny, or on my website, superyachtnanny.co. Not .com, not .co.uk, .co. And my email is superyachtnanny@gmail.com. And in case you're wondering who I am, I'm a super yacht nanny. In case it's not in the title.
Well, thank you very much for all of this information. And I will be in touch soon.
Perfect. So lovely to speak to you, Candy. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you for being here.